Paul McNamara joins me. Paul, how bad is it?
Well, terrible. Not quite as terrible as some predicted, but still terrible nonetheless. And what you have to remember when I tell you these stats is that they cover 3 months at the beginning of the year, largely before the coronavirus had any impact on the economy. So from January to March, the economy shrank by 2%, which is bad. But again, coronavirus only really impacted the last couple of weeks of March. And in March alone, the economy shrank by 5.8%, which is a record monthly decline. And economists pointing out that over the whole of the 2008 global financial crisis, the economy shrank by 6%. So almost as much damage done in March, which leads you to the question, just how much damage could be done in this 3-month period, a period defined by economic standstill and lockdown. The Bank of England tried to put a number on it last week. They said the economy could shrink by 25%.
And what does all this mean for the state of the government's finances?
Yeah, well, pretty bad again. Lots of people now are worried about just how much money the government is going to have to borrow to get us out of this hole. Treasury documents obtained by The Telegraph contain 2 bombshells about just that. Firstly, Treasury number crunchers saying that the bare minimum we might have to borrow this year could be £330 billion. Just to put that into context, pre-coronavirus, they thought the deficit would be £55 billion. Second of all, Treasury officials throwing around ideas about what they might have to do to get this borrowing under control, and some pretty unpalatable options in there. So tax rises and a possible public sector pay freeze. Now, look, none of that is government policy at the moment. None of that is going to be particularly attractive to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. I sat down with him earlier on to ask him about just that. He didn't deny any of it, as you're about to see, but I started off by asking him about those terrible growth figures and if that now means that a recession is inevitable.
Well, we've had GDP numbers today, which in some sense are not a surprise. In common with all other economies around the world, we are seeing a significant impact from coronavirus, and that's why we've taken these steps and these measures.
But you're avoiding addressing the recession there, though. Is that what we're looking at right now? Well,
look, as you all know, a recession is technically defined as 2 quarters of negative GDP. We've now seen 1, but you're right. That 1 quarter of negative GDP growth, January, February, March, was based on just a few days of lockdown and the impact from coronavirus. So now, obviously, we're in the midst of it now, so it is now very likely that the UK economy is facing a significant recession.
And what about the sums? $300 billion, that's been reported as the best case scenario as the bill for this year. Is that what you're looking at?
Well, as the Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility have in their scenarios numbers like that, why is that the case this year? Well, it's the case because of the impact of coronavirus, in common with many other economies, but also it's because of the measures that we've put in place, like the Jobs Retention Programme, the support for business. But what those institutions have also said is if we hadn't taken those unprecedented actions to support people, their jobs, and support business, the situation would be far worse. Those were the right decisions to take this year to ensure that our economy and public finances are strong in the long term.
Day in, day out, though, I'm talking to businesses that are saying they've furloughed workers, but in the current climate, there's no way that they'll be able to re-employ them. So just how many jobs do the Treasury think will never actually come back?
Well, I would not share that sentiment because there is now a clear plan.
It's what businesses are telling us.
Well, now that there's a clear plan that the government have put out that shows with dates our intention to reopen those parts of our economy that are currently closed.
So you don't think tens of thousands of jobs will be lost?
No, I've been very clear, and as we've just discussed, our economy is seeing a significant impact from coronavirus. We're seeing that already in universal credit claims, and I've said I'm not going to be able to protect every job and every business,
but
I do think...
we're not talking about a couple of jobs here and there. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs, aren't we?
Yeah, and I'm not going to give up on these people. That's why we've extended the scheme. That's why we've provided unprecedented support to businesses. You talked about businesses. They're receiving cash grants of £10,000 or £25,000. Their business rates have been cut for this entire year. They have access to discounted loans, like our bounce back loan scheme. They can defer their taxes. All of those things combined with the furlough scheme gives businesses the maximum possible chance to survive this crisis. And by extending the scheme, we've given them a long runway. And as our economy reopens, as per the plan that we've set out, they'll have the ability to bring employees back part-time as well. All of that gives me hope and confidence that we can emerge through this.
But will you soon be telling the rest of the public that they're going to have to accept years of tax rises and spending cuts to pay for this?
I think it's premature to speculate about the future. We're at
It's a possibility, though, isn't it? You're not ruling it out.
We're at a time of unprecedented.
Public sector pay freezes.
We're at a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. That's something that the Bank of England. That's something that the Bank of England and the Office of Budget of Responsibility have said. I think you're asking me to write future budgets today. I would echo what the Prime Minister said. I echo what the Prime Minister said previously. Those in the public sector on the front line. Those on the public sector. This is really important. Those in the public sector at the moment on the front line are doing an incredible job. We are determined to support them, which is why we have invested over £14 billion more this year in supporting frontline public services. Those people on the front line are doing heroes' work. They're getting all the financial support they need at this difficult time. And the Prime Minister and I are determined to ensure that we do have strong and well-funded public services, not just today and this year, but throughout the period.